Hi, I'm Rachel with my cat Missy up here. She's been hanging out more on this ledge lately. I'm not sure if she's trying for my attention or not at the moment, but we'll see how long she stays in the video. This one will hopefully be a quickie. It's my monthly Author's Answer video. The Author's Answer series was started by J.D. Archer and his writing group, where they ask various questions and answer them related to writing and reading habits. And I try to do one per month. I will link his playlist and my playlist down below. And this month I am up to question number 17. Question 17 is, what authors, styles, or intellectual movements influence you as a writer? I thought that intellectual movements one was particularly interesting. I guess it sets it apart from having been asked this question in various forms in the past. And it brought me back to my first major novel that I wrote when I was 11 years old, my first fantasy project called Captured by Fate. And I guess if there's an intellectual movement that I can claim, it would be an anachronistic sort of medieval Europe. Because Captured by Fate was a peasant fights a dragon to save the princess sort of story. I wrote it during an age where I was writing a lot as a child, but I didn't think all that critically about what was influencing me. I believe in some way I must have been thinking about like a picture book version of St. George versus the Dragon, or just a variety of Arthurian watered-down tales that I might have heard throughout my youth. And most of the stuff that I was writing as a younger kid was realist, and I'm sure I was influenced by what I saw on TV and what I read in books, but I didn't really think about it. I was mostly inside my head, and that's a good thing, to nurture the imagination. But surely as an adult things are different, and I am thinking very critically about what influences me and how I can improve my writing. So Captured by Fate was my first fantasy project, and it actually is my last one that I've ever done. But fast forward 24 years, and I'm hoping to do another fantasy novel for NaNoWriMo this year. I've talked about it in some other videos and talked particularly about how I felt influenced by certain elements in Peter Pan, Little Red Riding Hood, and Sansa Stark as she appears in A Song of Ice and Fire, but I guess mostly in Game of Thrones, stuff that happens to her in the show. But a lot of that stuff, I think, as I'm slowly starting to put together this story in my head, it's influencing the characters and the plot, but it's not necessarily influencing the world building. And for a fantasy world, you have to have a world for the characters to exist in. Immediately I thought I'd like to use some sort of Jewish backdrop for my fantasy world. And then, what do you know, Oxford University Press sent Steve Donahue an extra copy of this book. This is Palace of Pearls, The Stories of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, and it's retold by Howard Schwartz. This is stories and folklore of a 18th century rabbi who is a founder of one of the Hasidic movements, and his great-grandfather, the Baal Shem Tov, is basically the overall founder of Hasidim, which is an ultra-Orthodox movement of Judaism, very traditionalist in its rituals, also very into a fervent sort of joyful spiritualism, and into folk tales and folklore that comes out of the Eastern European Jewish tradition. And so this book, I'll talk about it more in detail, I suppose, in my August book haul. But it's it recounts a lot of the folk tales that he liked to tell, and it goes a little more into the historical backdrop, I believe, and I'm looking forward to reading it soon. And I thought maybe I could use it as a jumping off point to think of some of the stories and history that might influence my own Jewish-inspired fantasy world. It's a little nerve-wracking, perhaps. I'm not Hasidic, and even my knowledge of Rabbi Nachman is pretty anecdotal, like from little quotes and infrequent rabbinical learning sessions that I've taken place at my synagogue, or he's come up as a character or an influence in some contemporary Jewish fiction, But I'd really love for Judaism to be a more prominent influence for me, and there's something fantastical, I'm pretty sure, within these pages. But mostly what I write is realist, literary-leaning fiction, short stories, and my novella that I'm currently in the middle of. And I believe I've talked a little bit about some of the authors who influenced me here as well, like Allegra Goodman, who I recently included on my top 10 authors list in a recent video, because of her ability to get into the nuance of introspection and the thought processes of people in their lives and just intricacies. And then Jhumpa Lahiri, who's such a wonderful lyricist. She can really weave a story together, both I think in her novels and in her short stories, which I should reread. I've also included her on my top 10 favorite books list. And then I just finished a Meg Wolitzer book recently, and Meg Wolitzer also does so much with weaving in human, emotional, and intellectual truths with a forward-moving story and compelling backstory, and not a lot happens, but it's all very much about the human condition, and it feels maybe a little bit more approachable than Allegra Goodman and Jhumpa Lahiri, so I've been trying to channel her a bit lately as I've been doing my revisions. So that about covers it for me. I hope that answers, at least in some capacities, the whole issue of themes and authors and intellectual movements and how they influence me. In the meantime, I am finally elbow deep into my most recent revision of my novella, and I have about 4 chapters left to go. I'm trying to do 1 chapter a night after work. And then I'll hopefully be finishing up the final chapter, the one that needs the most work, on Saturday or maybe Sunday, and then I really think I'm going to try to send it out to some people to read, and I'm a little nervous about it, and my self-confidence isn't exactly in the most high place, but I'm glad to be putting the work in, and I think I'm snipping away at it and making it better with each pass. So there we go. It might be a good time then to take a step back and see what other people think of it. So that's what's on my agenda. I hope all of you creative types are making great headway too with your projects. So keep writing, everyone. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.